me go. Do I have everything set up? Okay. Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. I guess this is live, and we are also live on the Toward Health app. I am here. I'm Dr. Tro Kalesian. I'm a board certified internist. I'm a board certified obesity medicine doc. I'm a social media asshole. Sorry, Jack.
Social media punk. How about
Yeah,
that?
social media punk. And I've dedicated my life to reversing chronic disease. And somebody who I'm interviewing again is a friend, is a somebody who means a lot to me personally, and also is an inspiration for me regularly, and is somebody who I've had the pleasure of working with over the last 5+ years, reversing chronic disease in countless people, reversing obesity and diabetes in countless people, and I am so happy to welcome back Amy Igus. She is a health coach, a certified health coach. She is also our senior vice president of corporate wellness, and she has an amazing journey herself. And we share to each other, and I think to the world, our vulnerabilities online and through our written word and our posts. Which I think she does amazingly, which makes her very unique and relatable. She's lost 220 pounds and kept it off. And she deals with me regularly, so she really deserves like a Nobel Prize of some sort.
Of some sort, yeah.
So, Amy, I'm excited to have you on, and a couple things. We'll start with your backstory. And then, we'll certainly at some point talk about the holidays. And then, at Toward Health, we're trying to help people kickstart the holidays. So we'll get into that a little bit. So,
Yeah.
all right, tell me what I don't
Well,
know.
sure. Thank you for having me. I should say, like I don't consider myself your patient zero in this practice, but one of the lives who's one of the people whose lives you have helped heal is mine, right? Because I was a patient before I worked here. Um, and I did not devote my life to, or I didn't set out to devote my life to healing metabolic disease. I didn't even know what metabolic disease was. I spent the last 50 or so years just trying to heal myself. And I just did a random Google search. I came across I was just a couple weeks away from bariatric surgery and did a random Google search because I knew that was the worst possible choice for me because I knew that I had a food addiction issue, and I knew that no matter what size they cut my stomach to, I would still find a way. Uh, did a random Google search, came across low carb. It was the one diet I had never tried because it was so vilified. Atkins was so vilified. He's going to cause a million heart attacks from all the butter and the bacon and the steak. And anyway, I went down that rabbit hole. I thought, let me try this for a couple weeks. And it'll soon be 9 years, I think, if I'm doing my math correctly. And as you said, I'm keeping off over 200 pounds. And yeah, no one is more surprised than I am that this is my life trajectory, that this is my job now, that I spend my days talking and writing about the one topic I could not figure out for the life of me. So that's my story.
We talk about that. We see this all the time in our clinic about the medical community gaslighting patients. And I mean, I'm just going to list a couple that happened today. Literally, I had a patient who had a calcium score that supposedly changed, went from 0 to 120, and we looked at this. The cardiologist gave her a stress test, put her on multiple medications, and we looked at the calcium score, and she actually didn't have any change. She had a little, there was a bit of calcium on her aorta, which the computer read as in her heart arteries. So when I looked at this and I called the cardiologist, he said, well, I wouldn't change anything. I was like, what do you mean you wouldn't change anything? Like, you just put her on a slew of meds, you did a stress test, her heart arteries are clear, nothing has changed. That calcium was there 2 years ago when you saw the same scan. And he goes, well, I don't know, that's what I want to do. And so, that's just one example, let alone if you have hormone issues, right? And you go to your doctor and they're like, well, it's all in your head and this is a natural part of life, go deal with it. Right. And
no, they don't say go deal with it. They usually send you home with a prescription for Xanax or for antidepressant.
Right? You're being hysterical. We can remove that if you'd like.
Yeah.
But I think the community that gets gaslit the most is people who struggle with weight. And I remember being literally 13 years old and being told to count calories. I mean, it was like a phenomenal joke. Meanwhile, I knew every single calorie there was. And so, throughout the years, I went to medical school and I was told to just lose weight. Like, why can't you lose weight? And, the guidelines all along the way were gaslighting with their low-fat nonsense, right? And, I remember being a chief resident in a Yale-affiliated program at Greenwich Hospital. And, I remember literally saying, having somebody to say, maybe you're depressed, and I certainly didn't feel depressed, and I certainly didn't score high on a depression scale, after they told me that I should go count my calories, which I had memorized. So the gaslighting is just unbelievable. And when I even said to my fellow colleagues, Amy, like, maybe this is hormonal, they said, oh, it's not hormonal. It's just calories. And now all of a sudden they're all, prescribing a hormone, right, for weight loss. Now it's hormonal when there's a drug for it. So
how do they reconcile that? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how do you reconcile that you're okay? So there's no reconcile.
No, I mean, I who knows? But I want to hear. Because you've talked to me and you've talked about this. Oh, you want to hear about my guest being gaslit? I want to rage bait the audience here. Okay. I want to rage bait the audience. So there is not a single thing. Well, first of all, I should say that I stopped going to doctors for a really long time because I just, I didn't need somebody to continue to gaslight me. But for the 35, 40 years before I stopped going to doctors, and no matter what I went in for, like, you go in for a cut, it'd be better if you lost weight. But the one that I was just thinking of that I hadn't thought about in a long time, I went in as a teenager, maybe I was in my early 20s. I went to a dermatologist, and even the dermatologist, was like this. It wasn't even for like something that was nutrition related. Like, they were like, oh yeah, you should lose weight. And I was like, this is not even related to what we're talking about. Like, how is this related? There was not a single thing. And there was just so much blame and shame and sort of like, just there was not a single thing that wasn't blamed on my weight. And they didn't have anything new to offer me. It was like, go to Weight Watchers, right? Or, just eat the size of my palm, piece of protein the size of my palm, or just, it was just over and over and over, just judgment and shame and the same crappy advice. I think the gaslighting is so bad. I remember one of our first patients we had together when he started coaching here. This was, somebody who had lost weight. Seeing you and myself, and you had really worked, hard with her, and she lost 30 pounds in 6 months. Which is, really a great amount, in my opinion. She started, It's amazing. It's a really good amount, and her liver enzymes improved. And I don't know if you remember this, but, she went to her endocrinologist who said, you have to stop right now. And she was like, what do you mean? My liver enzymes improved. Like, why would I stop now? Why would I do this? And she said, no, you can't be doing that saturated fat. You can't do it, right? And so she came back to me in tears, and you're like, Tro, can you just call this doctor? And it was a local doctor. And I called her and I said, can you just explain to me, because she's losing weight, her blood sugars are better, her liver enzymes are better, her fatty liver is reduced. We don't need this $45,000 drug, which wasn't out at the time, but we don't need, her fatty liver's gone. And I remember she said, you inappropriately reduced her fatty liver. So this is an inappropriate way to reduce
You
fatty liver.
inappropriately healed my patient, is what she
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever faced anything like, she should be eating plants, is what she said to me.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I went to a doctor, a specialist, who it was my first time meeting him, and he never looked up from his computer while he was, doing the intake, and then he, got my general health information, and then he said, "Is there anything else you want me to know about you?" And I said, "Well, I've lost over 220 pounds over the last, X years, whatever had been at that point." And he still never looked up from his computer, and he said, "Oh, what surgery did you have?" And this was before, I think this may have been before GLPs were so well known. And I said, I didn't have surgery. I just did it through keto. And he looked up from his computer, which is also shocking. Like he never even looked up when I said I had to have been the only patient that he saw that day that had lost over 200 pounds, right? Like I'm gonna just venture a guess. Anyway, so he found when I said I didn't have surgery and then I did it through keto, finally looked up and he said, "Oh, that'll kill you." And I was like, "Oh my God, what really? This is gonna kill me." So I happen to have, I have my labs in on the cloud in my phone, and I was like, "All right, do I go there? Do I not go there?" But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go there with him because I figure like he's not gonna change for me, but he was young enough not to be stuck in dogma. And I was like, maybe the next person that comes in here, won't have to face this battle. So I went through my, A1C, my triglycerides, all my numbers, my insulin, all the things that, doctors look for. And he said, "Oh, but the bacon will kill you." And I was like, anyway. So I mean, that was not that long ago. And it's just, yeah, I guess I had inappropriately healed myself. So.
it's really, really, it's tough. It's tough when, we've been working together 5 years, helping people lose weight, helping people reverse their high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, and their weight issues. And it's tough because the world is still stuck. The world is still stuck. And then, the other part that's really hard, it's just it's really a constant fight. If you've been struggling at this forever, and I know you and I talk about this, and the whole world should hear this. So if you're a lifelong struggler, just realize people like me and Amy who have kept a lot of weight off, we still struggle every day. Like things are not, I mean, things get much easier. You learn how to eat, you pick up some habits, you learn warning signs to follow for yourself. But like if your drug of choice has been food, it's not going to magically just change, right? So, I think, you and I, we've talked about this, like it's still a struggle. Like, yes, we have
Yeah.
some food freedom, but maybe we could just share, and you could start sharing, and I'll certainly add on, like just some of the struggles you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of writing another blog post now called The Middle because I think what before and after pictures don't really talk about is just how hard that middle is, and that there is no after, right? I've come to the conclusion for myself there is no after. I mean, I do have a dramatic before and after picture, but it's really about this messy middle that is so hard, right? It's really where people I think mostly falter. And I think, my struggle is I knew it early on, which is why I was so hesitant to go for bariatric surgery because I knew that I was quote unquote using food rather than just eating food and enjoying food. And that for me, the struggle now, because my appetite is pretty reduced by eating low carb, and I can go long periods of time without eating. I've done longer fasts, but food is the way that I have always coped, and with stress, with sadness, with depression. I did have depression years ago, and um, this is what I have used. And so now that I am no longer hungry, but I constantly, not constantly, but I often find myself driven to eat when I'm not hungry, that sort of begs the question, like, what is that about, right?
Yeah, so tell people what you eat. So I think we could start there because there may be some listeners who are watching from God, TikTok, social media, who knows where, and they're like, well, what are you eating? You lost 220 pounds. Tell me what to eat. So maybe we'll just start there. What do you eat?
Well, what I eat now is a little different than how I ate when I first started. When I first started, I was very strict keto macros, and I sort of transferred my obsession with Weight Watchers points to counting macros and carbs, right? And it was really just the same. I was so fixated on Weight Watchers and staying within the Weight Watchers paradigm when I started, that I was going to do them. I was going to track them both in tandem. Like, I was going to track my macros and track my Weight Watchers points and kind of marry the two, and that didn't last very long. So I eventually gave myself over to keto, and I was very, it was high fat, moderate protein, very, very low, like 20 total carbs a day. And so what I ate was like, bacon and eggs for breakfast, and some protein and vegetables for lunch, and maybe I'd have some berries and some Greek yogurt, and then some meat and vegetables for dinner. And that's pretty much how I eat now. I don't eat breakfast now, rarely eat breakfast now. Um, and I typically eat protein and some vegetables and sometimes some low carb fruit.
Yeah, meat, fish, chicken, eggs, Greek yogurt, green leafy vegetables, plus
Yeah.
or minus berries. And if I really have a chocolate issue, a chips issue, a Pop Tart issue, a ice cream issue, I just replace it. Like, I'll just get a legendary. No, no, there's no conflicts of interest here. I just, I'll occasionally have a legendary Pop Tart or a
I'll take a discount
protein
code
shake.
from any of those places. I have no shame, but
Yeah, but those are infrequent, guys. So like, we're
yeah.
not, we're predominantly real food. We're sticking to real food to keep the 100. I lost 150 pounds. Amy lost 220 pounds. To keep the weight off, we really have to get close to sticking to real food. Any other tip that if the listeners out there, they have 220 pounds to lose, besides sticking to these foods and ditching the fear of fat and ditching the calorie counting nonsense, any other tips you have for them?
Oh, there's so many, but I think, as we head into the holiday season, I think that, there's so many landmines everywhere. There's so many social situations. Everybody's so stressed out. Everybody's busy. Everybody's trying to, keep all the balls afloat and end the year finishing out whatever work and personal stuff is going on for them. And I think what has been really helpful for me, because even when I went low carb for years, I would sort of, just go off the rails. It's actually what made me reach out to you as my doctor early on, is that I would like kind of go off the rails, occasionally, or I'd go, have a day here, a day there. And that really spiraled out for me pretty quickly. And before I knew it, I had put back on 20 pounds that I had lost. And I was like, if I don't get some accountability and support, all the weight that I had lost at that point, which was about 80 pounds at that point, is going to come back. And so that's when I became your patient. And I think one of the things that I have learned so effectively from you is to sort of shift the goalpost in terms of what is going on, right? So just pivot from like, I'm going to be in active weight loss now mode now, to like, not gaining weight through from Thanksgiving through January 2nd is like winning the Super Bowl. So that's when I would liberally use, some of those low carb replacement foods, because the not using them for me, and then there's some people, like some of our health coaches that work with us, like Tia, she strongly believes in abstinence, and that is great and works for her. But that I don't think would work for me. And so liberally using those replacement foods during the holidays means that I am not spiraling out and binging on, a whole bunch of flour and sugar and just all sorts of garbage.
Yeah, I think, I'm just going to add to that. I think the concept of just food addiction is like a liberating concept. It's like, look, I got a car outside, and if I get a flat tire, I just fix it right away. I just fix it right away. And if somebody's like, hey, you got a flat outside, I'm like, I'm happy. I'm like, thank you for letting me know. I wouldn't have seen that. And I go get it fixed real quick. I'm pissed off that I got to fix a tire. It's $150 now. But I just get it fixed immediately. And when food is not like that, it's not like that easy to just be like, you know what, I shouldn't be eating this. I'm going to stop right now, right? If it's not that easy, it tells me, hey, look, there's something more. So really understanding that concept of food addiction, I think for me was pretty liberating.
I
And I think the other problem that I faced, and this dovetails into something I wanted to talk about, was, the struggle when you get off plan. It's like all of a sudden you got off plan for Thanksgiving. It lasted for 4 days. Then you struggled. Your appetite was back because you're not ketotic. Your blood sugars are going all over the place, and you had a taste of the good stuff, right? You just got a taste of it, right, for 4 days. And then you gather yourself for a week or so, and then there's a holiday party, right? And there's drinks, and there's carbs, and there's a whole bunch of nonsense like chips and blah, 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 desserts, right? Chocolate. And then there's the holiday gifts that you get at the workplace with the chocolate and the whatever, the eggnog, who knows, right? So you're on this onslaught where you're just losing control because the environment is just triggering you. And then it's the holidays, Christmas Eve, the Hanukkah, the Christmas Day, the New Year's Eve, the New Year's Day, the alcohol, the food, it's all there. And it becomes like the 6 weeks of losing control, shame and blame, guilt. And then, everybody's like just delaying recovery. You know what? I'll do this on Monday. And then Monday never comes because they're under attack every week for 6 weeks. And then they get to January 2nd. And they weren't smart enough to go to Torrid.health, right, and click on January boot camp. They weren't smart enough to do that. So they're home alone, right? And they've been eating off plan for 6 weeks, and it's like literally they're like like spiritually drained, almost emotionally drained.
Yeah,
And
it's
they just are like,
PTSD.
I can't do this. I
Yeah,
can't,
it's
I'm not.
PTSD because it's probably not their first time at that rodeo. It certainly wasn't my first time at that rodeo of like starting over. The rest of my life starts January 2nd. You just even look at the gyms, come January, the first week of January versus like mid-February. It's like, what happened? Like it's
Well,
6 weeks. Like
so
everybody's
so why
gone.
does that why does that I want to understand what you think about this because you've lectured nationally at SMHP, Boca. You've talked at Obesity Help on food addiction, and so I want to help. I just want some understanding. Why do you think this happens? Why do people that you're helping day to day in these health coaching boot camps and small groups? Why do you think they delay recovery? Why do people delay recovery?
It took me a long time to recognize that delayed recovery wasn't keeping me food addicted. It was food addiction. It was like the voice of food addiction. That was one of those voices that was like, when my quote unquote normal friends overeat, they don't do it for, it doesn't last for 6 weeks. They just go back to, they had a big lunch, they have a small dinner. They have, like they go on vacation, they come back and they, kind of just go back to eating how they were eating. And it doesn't, they no nothing internally is telling them, keep going. You screwed up. You may as well just keep going. Keep doing what you're doing. And it took me a really long time, and I am sure it was you that pointed it out to me over and over until I actually finally got it, that is the voice of food addiction, right? It will weaponize your most awful, vulnerable parts to say, oh, look, you can't do this. Why bother? Keep going. Just keep eating. You'll start over on that magic day, which is, either Monday or January. second, and yeah, I think, the example that you always use and which is so incredibly apt is like if we got a flat tire, would we get out and just stab a hole in the other three? Like it's just, but we all do that with food and diet. And it's so hard to break that line of thinking. But I think just recognizing the pattern that plays out, like that, oh, if I eat this and I eat in a certain way, my brain is going to tell me to keep going. So just even being prepared for those thoughts, I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I think when we've talked about this, those category, the categories of food addiction. So, well, first of all, if you're out there and you've been struggling your whole life with food, you should be on high alert, right? Like you should be on high alert that maybe I have food addiction, right? And then the second thing you should be like looking out for is, am I hungrier than most people? Am I hungrier than most? Do I have this vulnerability to just eat? Right? Whether you eat good food, bad food, however you want to judge your own food, I don't care. Can you eat? And if the answer is yes, the next thing you have to answer is, why is this so hard for me? Right? Why is this so hard for me? And then and that is a obvious, like an emotional logic. It's a manipulation that happens in real time, right? If somebody doesn't, wants to radically change their health, radically get healthy, right? What is causing them to lose control? What is causing them to eat off plan? Right? There's something in real time that's just not clicking. You got to figure that out. And the last part is why don't I recover immediately? Why am I delaying recovery? Why is it that I can wait till Monday or I can wait till the New Year's? Gosh, if you're listening right now, don't wait for New Year's. Sign up for the Toward Health app right now for free, and it's free. And you sign up for a boot camp. Get involved right now. Get involved right now. Act right now. Don't delay recovery. Right. I think that's the. I'm being a little comical when I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting, but don't delay recovery. Like pretend your health journey is your car and you got a flat tire, you would just get help right away. And so and the only time I've seen in medicine where somebody delayed recovery, like purposely delayed recovery, is one, they really didn't want it. They didn't want it, like they didn't want treatment, or they didn't want anything, or they were addicted. And if you had alcohol addiction, what would you do? You'd face reality. You'd stop the denial. You'd say, okay, I got a problem. And then you'd get help. You'd find support. So Amy, just if you don't mind, can you tell me, a little bit about, you've worked with people for 5 years. You work people in our medical clinic. You work with individual clients for health coaching. But you also have these small groups that have just been amazing for the patients in our clinic. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about how your small groups / boot camps, how they run, so we just have a little more idea about them.
Yeah, so these small groups are limited number of people, usually 8 to 10 people. And we really kind of work through what we work through in our more intensive metabolic health and medical weight loss program, but with group support. And, the group gets to know each other. It's 8 consecutive weeks. And, we work through the curriculum, but it's really about meeting people where they are. Like every group is different. There's always a common thread. Because often my groups are with people that are dealing with food relationship and food addiction issues. But, sometimes it's, giving people the basics and then, sometimes it's just like helping people be consistent and giving and offering them support and having the group offer support. And one of the things that I think the group is so incredibly effective at is helping to remove a lot of the shame and judgment that is surrounds this issue. And it's sort of what you said earlier about like why do people delay recovery? I think the biggest issue is one of the biggest issues is that it's the food addiction gives us that message, and then our sort of own shame and diet culture and all the doctors that gaslit us and all the diet programs out there that gaslight us into thinking that it's all our fault and we can't do it and we're weak. And then those messages become internalized. And so that the group can give you can reflect back to you sort of what, no, you're not broken and you're not deeply flawed and this is hard. And we're all in this together. I think that's the most effective part of the group. I mean, the groups that we're doing in January, I'm running one that'll be a little bit more food relationship focused. And then one of our other coaches, Vic Basmajian, is running one that's really around consistency and kind of a high accountability support. But he'll talk a little bit about food relationship too, I'm sure, because it's kind of within all of our DNA at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think, when you're in this atmosphere where you're seeing people who have similar struggles as you and conquering them in different ways, those mirror neurons in our brain are just firing. You're learning, like, what are other people doing? What should I be doing? And you get feedback from people like, hey, I ran into that situation. I talked to somebody today, and he's like, look, I'm working the night shift now. It's been a struggle. It's been hard. It's very difficult for me. And gosh, I, downloaded all my information from me to him about what it was like working in the hospital, struggling with food, how I protected myself, what I did before I got home. And it's this type of, input that gets you not to be paralyzed, right? It's like, okay, now I know what to do. I immediately know what to do. And it's getting you out of that stuck phase where there's no self-blame. Like, he came in saying, this is an excuse, Joe, but I'm working late nights. I said, you're damn right it's not an excuse. It's not. I've been there. I know what it's like to haven't slept. You go home and there's all sorts of food home. And it's so hard when you haven't slept. The cravings are through the roof. You could eat all the food you want. You're still going to be hungry. Doesn't matter. It's not a fault. That's something we got to deal with. So I think,
yeah, one of
yeah,
the things that you talked about earlier on in this conversation was really just about how we struggle. And I think honestly, like I'm not somebody that really likes to be public, like I don't love to share my greatest weaknesses and vulnerabilities and my 50 years of angst and depression and all that stuff. I am a very private person. But I think what my greatest weakness is also my greatest superpower in some regards. Because the thing about, just going back to even, in my small groups or even working as a health coach or even in my blog posts is like the thing that nobody says that you and I say and all the other health coaches is just that this is really hard. And it doesn't mean that it's impossible and it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, but that this is hard. And I think what you did for your patient this morning and what I really try to do is just validate that they're not crazy, that they're not being gaslit into thinking, oh, just eat, enough protein is the size of your palm of your hands and that's going to be okay, right? Like we are so honest with the struggles and we kind of want to be even more honest about how hard it is because then we can come up with strategies to make it less hard. And I think that's truthfully, where we excel. I mean, I'm gonna
yeah.
just toot
And
our
I
horn,
think
but
I think you're absolutely right. I think, one of the biggest things I've seen is there's two key areas three key areas. One, if you're struggling with food your whole life, well, you're tuned into the right place, right? We're here to help. And these are the three, like eat filling foods. Step one, eat nutritious foods, eat filling foods, be full, meat, fish, chicken, eggs, green leafy vegetables, low carb fruit, replace what you can't restrict. Super simple what to eat. Then it's understand that in real time, something is messing with your decision making. Be on high alert. If you struggle with this your whole life, just realize that something is messing with your real time decision making. Don't always trust your feelings with food. Don't always trust your logic with food. Don't always trust, like just second guess, like reevaluate. Am I real? What's going on here? What's the best outcome? Because there is something, right? When you have food addiction, there is something messing with your judgment. And the last thing is, if you make a mistake, if you struggle, don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for, New Year's. get the community support right now, right? And there's free ways to do it. And if you need more help, there's paid ways to do it where you can get a little more insight, but there's free ways to do it. And, a lot of the people joining us right now are on the Toward Health app. They're live streaming this for free, where they're able to just connect with other people. And if you need more support than that, you need weekly support. We have these boot camps, and you're an expert when it comes to food addiction. You've talked nationally on food addiction, and if you're somebody out there and you're suffering from the 4 C's, which is, wanting to cut down, loss of control, right? Eating despite consequences, right? If you have these 4 C's, right, you're going to want to get help from somebody like Amy. If you are somebody who has a sort of more straightforward relationship to food and you just need a kick in the butt, so to speak, Vic Bismajian, who's been on the podcast before, check out his amazing 2 interviews that he's done. He runs our high accountability program in our practice. He's all about
I want to sign up
execution.
for his high accountability program.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there too. We have two programs in the summer, and they're just low cost ways for you to get involved in our practice. And these are people who've dedicated their lives to reversing chronic disease and have executed and published on it as part of a team. So we're excited for the new year. We're excited to have people join us. And Amy, anything you want to say before we sort of wrap up this live stream and podcast?
No, just I hope that people will join us. The groups start the first week of January. I hate the idea of just waiting until January to start. So as Cho said, don't just recognize the thought patterns that come when you eat something and your brain says, "Oh, just keep going." Why start now? Nobody starts a diet in December. Well, this isn't a diet, and what I hope to do with our small groups, our boot camps, is really get people off that diet binge roller coaster and just come up with a lifestyle that is sustainable and people can stick to beyond, the second week of January. So.
Guys, thank you so much. In the show notes on the podcast, we will put the links to join Amy's small group and Vic's small group. And you can get the Toward Health app for free. Come join us, and we're going to see you hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And you can get started now. You can get started right now. Don't wait. And but we'd love to be a part of your journey, and we hope you join our journey. Amy, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Joe.